Good morning, good evening, and wherever the sun may find you, my name is Walt, and this is Coffee and Concepts on Keystroke Medium. So, what are we doing today, Keystrokers? Well, let me tell you. First up, we have a tasty treat derived from the almighty bean. What do I mean by that? Well, sometime during the cover everything in chocolate phase that our country went through, and by extension, a good chunk of the planet a few decades ago, um, we ended up with a tasty treat such as coffee. Hey, Patty Finn saying hello. Good afternoon to you and good morning to me. Or, well, it's kind of my evening because I work overnight, but nobody cares. So, way back in the way back when everything was covered in chocolate and just everybody was having a good time throwing stuff in like double boilers and chocolate covered scorpions, grasshoppers, somebody said, instead of all this poisonous crap, maybe we should throw coffee beans in there. And that's kind of what happened. So chocolate covered coffee beans come in a wide variety of types, sensations, flavors, you name it. So the fun part about trying different coffee chocolate mashups is the types of chocolate can vary just as widely as the different types of bean. So you can cover your coffee beans in milk chocolate, dark chocolate, mint chocolate, white chocolate. Some folks have even ground up and covered the chocolate in sprinkles of dried ground fruit, such as strawberry or coconut. And then, of course, when you're making all this stuff, you can get crazy and take your coffee beans and vary the bean. So you go with a lightly roasted or dark roasted. You can go with my personal favorite, which is chocolate covered espresso beans. And yes, I am going to be a nerd. Yes, the word is espresso with an ESS, not espresso. The beans do not make you go faster. You've been warned. So anyway, back to our coffee. Chocolate covered espresso beans. I enjoy them because, especially if they're milk chocolate coated. The milk chocolate has a very decidedly sweet taste. The espresso beans are usually heavily roasted, so they have a salty, almost and a crunchy taste to them. Really brings out the hint of the chocolate, and the chocolate balances the salty and bite of the bean, the smokiness of the bean. Lots and lots of fun. So like right here, I have Barista brand milk chocolate covered espresso beans. I really like these because of the fact that, and for my friend JR out there, JR Hanley, who is a really good friend of the show, author, dad, soldier, he said that I haven't been trying enough coffee in front of the camera. So here you go, brah. All right. So the cool thing about these beans is when you bite into them, the softness of the milk chocolate really hits you first. You get that sweet taste, and then you get the crunch of the bean. And that saltiness kind of blends and balances out with the coffee. I mean, with the chocolate. It's really, I'm sorry about the crunching in the microphone, but it's JR's fault. So it's a really nice way to experience a boost. But just keep in mind, you are not going to be able to vibrate through the color number 4 just by eating a few of these. But you should also keep in mind that you're going to get 2 sources of caffeine from eating chocolate covered coffee beans. The first type of caffeine is coming from the bean itself. Typical bean has anywhere between 15, 20 milligrams of concentrated caffeine in it. And then you're going to get a hint of caffeine from the chocolate. So cacao plants, where chocolate comes from, has a modicum of caffeine in it. It's not as much as the coffee bean itself, but just keep in mind you're getting those 2 sources of 2 sources of caffeine. The thing to consider is absorption rates. So the chocolate, because it's bonded with either natural or artificial sugars, is going to speed that caffeine much faster in through your system than just the straight caffeine of the bean, because it's bonded with those sugars, and your body really loves sugar. And that's why, we have problems in the United States with people and sugar. So really a lot of fun. It's a neat way to have your coffee, not necessarily like a cup of coffee, but a neat way to experience coffee in a new light, covering it with chocolate. And once again, we talked about fruit additions, different types of chocolate, different types of beans. A lot of ways to have this confection, so it's the combinations are truly endless. So much like our featured chocolate covered beans. For our concept today, I wanted to talk a little bit about dialogue and the different types of dialogue from across the country. How different areas, different ethnicities, and different demographics approach speaking language, and how it gets to how those differences interact when they meet each other. So here are a few things that you can do that will help you differentiate languages and dialect in your dialogue when you're writing dialogue between disparate groups of people. A great way to learn about different ways that people speak to one another in the same language was for myself to go in the military. It was a big, huge shock. First of all, English is not my primary language, and I've spent ridiculous amounts of time when I was in my youth learning how to speak without a very pronounced ethnic accent. However, when I got into the military and got into basic training, many people from all parts of the country didn't have that same kind of training, so their natural accent, natural dialect, and natural colloquialisms came out in ways that were a lot of fun and made for some very confusing moments. So the Armed Services has people from all over, and the different dialects mix with different accents, combining with the colloquialisms. And it just really made things kind of weird in the first few minutes. It can give you perspective in how different areas of the country, as well as different demographics, kind of approach life by the way they speak. If you speak to a New Yorker who is from the mid-city in a certain demographic, they have a tendency to speak very quickly. A lot of the accent and consonant sounds are blurred together. So when they're talking really fast and, hey, man, I got to get going. I got to do this. I got to do that. Blah, blah, blah. Hey, man, I'll catch you later. Bye. I got to go pick up my dog from the thing. Right. And everything's very abbreviated. Everything's very quick and snappy and poppy. Whereas certain other demographics from that same city might have a more relaxed atmosphere, a more pronounced way of speaking, depending on how they were raised, where they were raised, and how they go about their particular day. Whereas you were talking to somebody in Georgia, they had a very, especially more away from the coast, it was more like in the mountains. They had a very drawn out way of speaking. It was understandable, but yet at the same time, there was a lengthening to certain parts of the way they spoke. So it was kind of interesting to see how that very rapid, very staccato rhythm of people in that particular demographic in New York spoke with those guys in Georgia, and like how they interacted and how long it took one guy to get out a thought versus the other. So that was kind of cool. Now, if you don't want to have to, sign on the dotted line for military service just to write dialogue, another way that you can kind of parse how different things react in different parts of the country is by, and excuse me, I have an angry cat. Oh, so we're going to just do that. He can shut his little furry cake hole, and we continue. So, watching news shows from across the country. It's easily done via Facebook and YouTube. It's another great way to pick up on the differences in the way people speak. Now, we're not talking about like the newscasters themselves, because those guys have the dialectual flavor of a bowl of vanilla. There's no difference in the way any of them speak. They go to college and then train to eliminate accent from their voice. So they all have this, yes, Linda, I'm on scene, all of them. And it's very bleh, who cares? But the people they interview can be very interesting. Anything from a traffic accident where people are on scene and talking. You can get good sense of how that particular dialect sounds when it's stressed, or when those people sound when they're stressed, to public interest pieces where, you know, you're talking about some flower show in the middle of Georgia, and how that elongated type of talking, how that deals with being in the spotlight. So watching those shows via Facebook and YouTube can be very eye-opening as far as that. Best number one way to kind of get these dialectual cues from different parts of the country, go there. Visiting, fantastic way to do it. Not only will you get firsthand experience listening and dealing with some of these various accents and dialects, but at the same time, you might just have some fun while you're there. They could do some things that are different than the place where you come from. You'll pick up on dialectual cues, accents. It's very easy for me to pick up the accent in the Northeast, especially in the predominantly Italian areas, because that is where I grew up. The majority of my family, they all talk like this. The ones of my generation, because, you know, they grew up around here. They got these elongated vowels sounds, and then elongated consonant sounds, sometimes playing off each other, you know, and that's very easy to slip into, while the rest of my family that were from overseas before they came here, they speak with a very pronounced Italian accent. So, you know, you kind of get that. That's very easy to figure out when you're kind of from these places. But like when I went to places like Georgia, Kentucky, Arkansas, North Dakota, South Dakota, you know, all these different places where the accent was predominantly different. It took a minute. One of the cool things about visiting these places is you're going to get a sense of what they call different things. The biggest example that I saw was soda. So where I'm from, it's just called soda. If you wanted a soda, you asked for one. Somebody would ask you what type. So, hey, man, can I have a soda? Sure. What kind do you want? You know, very easy. When went to places like Michigan, they asked for a pop, and I was totally confused. Hey, man, do you want me to get you a pop? The hell are you talking about? And or a Verner's, you know, which is the name brand from up in that area, and it was very unique and a lot of fun to kind of get that. One thing that was from my area of the country where I said it, and one of my friends in basic training was like, "What are you talking about, dude?" I asked where the bubbler was, and nobody had any idea what I was talking about until I said, you know, you press the button, the water comes out, you take a drink. And, you know, one of my good friends looked at me and was like, "Oh, you mean a water fountain." So, I mean, that kind of stuff you can't get by just kind of hoping you get it right. You kind of have to experience it, and it's a lot of fun doing that. When you're doing all of this, remember to record some of this stuff and take notes. Refer back to this frequently so that when your mind, as you're writing, is caught in the quagmire of various things you're trying to remember, all these story beats and elements and characters and stuff like that, you kind of have a cheat sheet there to remind you of what those different sounds might, how they may play off of each other. So that way you're not lost when a New Yorker is being fast and furious with their description of what you're trying to get done, or the meandering set of directions you're going to get from a dude in rural Maine. You don't want all that stuff to get lost in the middle of all of that other dialect stuff, story element stuff that you have going on. A lot of this dialect and regional accent and regional ways of speaking are like treasure troves, because it even before somebody says, "Hey, I'm from Georgia. Hey, I'm from Florida. Hey, I'm from Kansas. I'm from California." A lot of this type of speech will identify your character ahead of time and give your reader a heads up as to say, "Hey, this is where he's from. Can you guess? Can you guess?" So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So remember, we are on a drive to get to 1,000 subscribers. So the other day on the show, they had gotten to 978. We will, and we must get to 1,000 subscribers so that we can bring you even more content, cool stuff on Keystroke Medium. Don't forget to check in with Josh, Scott, and Chuck on Mondays at some point when they decide how their schedule is going to run, and when they talk about all facets of reading, writing, and the tips and tricks of getting into the weeds with all stuff publishing. Lauren, wait a minute. We got a comment from Patty Finn. Main character for my current work in progress is from Brooklyn. I'm from Ireland. Ellen will have a field day or a conniption, most likely the latter. Right on, man. Yeah. I actually would love to get you on the show and hear if you can do a New York accent. If you do a New York accent, I promise I will try and do an Irish accent, and I will practice the hell out of it so I knock it out of the park. Let me know. Write in the comments. That would be awesome. But yes, don't forget, on Thursday nights, we have Lauren and Kayleen diving deep into the facets of what it means to get into writing and bringing you the best in talent and professionals from across the publishing spectrum to give you insight so that your journey isn't as difficult and more pleasurable, because Lauren and Kayleen are awesome. And then last but not least, Patty Finn, he's like, bah, let's do it. Challenge accepted. Don't you threaten me with a good time. Yeah, man, set it up. Hit me up on FaceSpace, and we'll definitely set this up. This would rock on all cylinders. Josh Gayu is doing long form storytelling on YouTube, where he sits down and dissects a topic over several hours to really pull all the meat from the bone and get you diving deep into everything he's talking about. Of course, Coffee and Concepts at Tuesday, 7:30 a.m. or as soon as I can get the cat to shut up. Thanks for coming out this morning. Thanks for chilling out with a little bit of coffee and espresso beans. And for JR, once again, crunch. We're out of here.